they want us to be more.
Oh.
A very good morning, everyone. My name is Mvuyi Mntwapi, Africa IT Director. Welcome to In Conversation with Women of Unilever Series number 3. Today I'm joined by our beautiful speakers, and I'll allow them to introduce themselves shortly. But before I do that, I think it is very important that, we gather here today to basically deliberate and actually have a fruitful conversation around employability and career coaching. And I'm very much looking forward to the conversation that I'm going to have with the two ladies here with me. And, if we can just briefly spend, let's say, 2 minutes each, introducing yourself, who you are, and what really resonates and connects with you around this specific topic we're going to be having today, right? Let's start with you, Njabulo. Yeah.
Thank you, Mvuyi. My name is Njabulo Mashigo, and it's a full circle moment for me because I started my career at Unilever. So 21 years later, it's good to be here. I'm an HR director, have been in HR for the last 21 years. Very excited for this topic because I guess I'm also talking about my personal experience. I think over the last 21 years, rising into the leadership space, and I think we need more women. So I'm very excited because I think there's lots of room and we need to be very deliberate about it.
Super. And yourself, Mvuyi?
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Mvuyi Mntwapi. I'm a mother to a beautiful daughter. She's 11. I'm a wife to an amazing husband who plays a key role in being a spiritual coach for me. And then, of course, I carry my Unilever role as heading up HR for Africa. It's an amazing day today, and it's such a privilege to have Njabulo here. We've worked together in different organizations over the period. So I couldn't have chosen a better person to share the stage with. It's important to me, this topic, because of my journey. Often people see you where you are today. They actually don't understand what it took to get here. And therefore, coaching is important, and employability, particularly of black people and black women, is still important in my heart. And I'm looking forward to sharing my journey and my experiences and insights in this area.
Super. Welcome, our beautiful panelists, guys. Yeah.
Okay.
So maybe to kick off the session, to demystify maybe the coaching element and the mentoring element, because sometimes it's interchangeable and it can mean different things to different people. Can we maybe start with you, Mvuyi, to just help us understand the difference between coaching and mentoring and what it means, yeah?
Yeah. Look, I'll give you the definition, but I actually don't think it matters, right? Because all of it is about support, advice and guidance and having the right network. In fact, the world we're moving into right now, post-COVID, requires one to have more than one coach and more than one type of support. And therefore, my thinking on this has evolved to actually often we get fixated with definitions, but they actually don't matter. The key question is, do I have the right level of support? Do I have the right level of network to help me grow in my career? Do I have the right people to make me shine? Do I have the right people to unlock the best in me? It's not any different if you think about sporting analogy and even culture and artists. If you think about the most popular artists, whether it's music or sport, they have an army of people around them who help them nurture their talent. And I think that's the principle of coaching and mentoring. Definition-wise, if you like, I think it differs in terms of focus, it differs in terms of structure, it differs in terms of the nature of relationship that you have. And we can debate this all day long, right? But in my mind, coaching does tend to be very specific around accelerating and unlocking performance and even potential. It can be more of a shorter term. You have a goal, you need to achieve it. You identify who you need in your corner to do that. And once that's done, you can terminate that relationship and move on to other people. Whereas mentoring, in my mind, is really more of a lifelong journey, thinking about legacy and impact and the type of people you need around you to help that. And typically there are people who've got wisdom and knowledge that kind of carries on across different generations, and they can help you at every milestone in your longer term career journey. That's really how I see it. But I do want to emphasize the point around the purpose of coaching and mentoring, and I think that's really where we should turn our attention, especially now as we live in this ever-changing, very turbulent, very uncertain world. You need a lot more people around you. And in my view, there is no one person that can do it all, right? And therefore, that's why I kind of, my thinking has changed a little bit in this area. What do you think?
And Njabulo, what's your take on your end?
Yeah. I mean, I agree with everything that you've said. A new one for me, or in recent times, that I've really been grappling with is sponsorship.
Yeah.
So I think when you think about mentoring, coaching, sponsorship, so I think everything that you've said, it's really all around having people around you who can support you. I think why sponsorship matters a lot, what I'm hearing a lot, there's a narrative around, especially women are being over-coached, over-mentored, but under-sponsored. And sponsorship is important because you do need somebody or people who can advocate for you. And I think it's quite important when you do think, and as we have the conversation around how you build the support for yourself, I think we just want to maybe add sponsorship and as one of those key elements. And I think it's a challenge to ourselves as leaders as well. Are we sponsors? What role can we play as sponsors? But also when a person is coming up and growing, how are you building that in terms of what you can get out of those relationships?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think, especially when you work for big corporates and multinationals, it's very easy to get lost in the system, right? You can be the highest performer, you can be the person with an amazing work ethic, but if you don't have that one person advocating for you behind closed doors, then it still doesn't go far enough. The other one is a reflection point for me post-COVID, is the importance of well-being. You guys know I talk about this probably in every town hall. But I've been amazed at a number of people who now have, as part of their coaching network, a therapist, a counselor, or a wellness coach, right?
Yeah.
The first time I heard about this, I was like, are you okay? Is there something wrong with it? And the person said, no. It's just I have this person where on a monthly basis I can dial in and just talk about how my week has been, how my month has been, and the things that are bothering me, the things that are irritating me. And then I've got someone on the other side just listening, actually, and offering advice at times. And I think so my mindset has shifted quite a lot when I thought therapy was about, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
But actually it's a necessity given the amount of pressure that we face in organizations at the moment. And just externally, it can be quite overwhelming, and just having that in your network is becoming critically important as well.
Absolutely. And just to process things.
Just to process.
Because there's so much we need to process on a continuous basis.
True that.
Yeah.
I like the whole thing around, you mentioned coaching in sports, right? I mean, I'm a big soccer fan, and if I look at the likes of Pep Guardiola, in terms of the exciting work they've done, but also look at the integrated play itself. You normally have somebody that coaches you on how to head a ball, how to shoot, how to dribble. And I think it resonates with what you've just said now around, having different pieces of people actually working with you to actually, accelerate certain, opportunities. But taking it back, right, often than not, career coaching is misplaced, done too late, or unintentional, right, with varied results. In your own experience, Njabulo, how has it been?
Yeah, I do agree. I think it's if left unmanaged, then it is very random and it can be left too late. I think my personal experience and how I've grown my career, and certainly in my role as a people practitioner, is it's always advising people to be super deliberate about your development, about where you see yourself going and how you want to get there. And I think that how you get there, I'm a bit hesitant because there's no exact formula, but I do think you need to have a sense of direction. And importantly, you need to take ownership to actually make it happen. Yeah.
If I can add, I think it's something we need to think about at various stages in our careers, right? When I reflect on how I started my journey, it's a bit of a long story, but I didn't go straight to university, actually. When I finished matric, my mom lost her job, and I ended up at home. I was 18, all my friends were at varsity, and I was at home, and I landed a job at a bank later on. And then fast forward 5 years later, my dad retired and said, I even came to Joburg, actually, we'll talk about that much later. And my dad said, you need to come home, I'm retiring, and here's all my money. This is your last chance to go to varsity. So when I entered, actually, the second time, I was a lot more wiser. When I entered the first time, I only did 6 months, and there were no more funds. But actually, at that point, I didn't even know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I was listening to my friends. Some wanted to do BCom science, and I was just following. I actually spent the first month attending every class. So I would follow my friend who was doing BSc computers, and I decided this is not for me. Then I was in the accounting class, and the lecturer was asking me at this formula and asking one, but I was like, too stressful. And I went around and I went around, and because I didn't have the career counseling at that stage and the guidance on how do you even approach this thing, I was a bit lost, right? And it took a hard experience like not having financial muscle to continue your studies. It took that experience for me to get a bit wiser. So I think it's important when you are at early stage of your career now, because there are multiple opportunities. If you think about when I studied, there were probably a handful. Now it's like the universe is your oyster. So it's important to invest early as you think about mid-career, to understand your goals, to shape your experiences, to think about how you profile yourself. And then I think another pivotal moment is when you enter mid-career phase. That first rotation as a director can be something, right? And if you don't approach it with intentionality, you can fail, right? You can really fail. And the role of the coach there to just help you think through the transition, help you think through your 90-day plan, help you think through how you're going to build relationships, and a whole lot of other things. So I think every stage does require an intervention, I would say.
No, super, super. I think it leads me to my next question, right? And, you know, how does one choose the right career coach, right? And even after doing that, what should you look out for? I mean, in a coach, what are the signs that you should look out for to actually say, you know what, I mean, I think Menz is the right person to be coaching me?
Yeah, that's a big one. I think chemistry is important. So I think you do need to look for a coach where you think they're relatable and you can actually learn something from them. You would want to check their credentials in terms of their experiences, the type of coaching that they've done. And if you have clarity on your side, because again, people enter into coaching relationships at different stages and for different reasons. Sometimes it's seeking clarity, but if you know this is the direction I want to go, this is the type of career I want to pursue, then in your picking the coach, it's quite important to actually have somebody who's walked that journey or who has experience in that particular direction, because it's relatable. They've done it. They can maybe help in terms of coaching around the pitfalls and some of the things that you can expect. I think the self-awareness piece is still important, and self-awareness is one, knowing yourself, of course, but there's tools to help you as well. And normally, in the beginning stages of coaching relationships, a big part of that is just the self discovery. You know, what are my strengths? What am I not good at? What don't I want to be? What I might not be successful at? Because I think at a later stage, and I think where we began around coaching, mentoring, sponsorship, and just building your network, is about also supplementing and complementing where you know you've got gaps. So to know what your gaps are, you would actually have to know yourself. And I think also in finding a coach, you actually want somebody who has those tools and who can support you with that. Yeah, I don't know if you want to add. Yeah.
Super.
Yeah, no, I think it's good. I think for me, stretch is important. I really don't want a coach that has answers for absolutely everything. I like people who can go deep beneath the iceberg and help me figure out the solutions myself. I think that's critical.
Yeah.
And then probably, I mean, they're thinking out there as to, okay, if I'm a female, do I go out looking for a female coach? Does it really matter?
Personally, I don't think it matters. But again, what is the reason behind what you are getting the coaching in, right? So you could deliberately say, I want to deal with a senior woman who has actually maybe has had certain experiences in how they've built their career. And so some people do approach me for coaching and mentoring because they're like, well, I'm a woman and I want somebody who can relate, to whose journey I think I can relate. You could also pick a man because, and unfortunately, corporate still is largely at a senior level male. And for me, I've found a lot of men are open to being coaches and mentors, and you find a lot of allyship with men because they've been in those boardrooms. They know what the challenges are. So that's where gender could or play a role. But if you're just talking about knowledge, experience, and expertise, I don't think gender is really a big one for me anyway. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your views,
No,
Mvuyi?
I totally agree. I think that to have a mix of people with diverse experiences is really what you need to go after. I found when I've had very, very difficult male stakeholders, and I've had quite a few in
Yeah.
my career, going to a male coach actually helped me because you can see things from their perspective and you can adapt your style. You're not doing it for them, you're doing it for yourself, right? With female coaches, I think because they have lived experiences and those resonate immediately and you feel heard immediately and you get support probably a lot faster because they've kind of worked a similar journey to yours. So I think that that's been my experience.
And how can women successfully support one another, right, as career coaches without fear, without that pull me down syndrome? How can that be achieved? Because, I mean, this is
Yeah.
the reality of life, guys, yeah?
Yeah. It's so interesting because, firstly, I don't believe in that whole pull me down queen bee story. I don't. I just think it's one of the stereotypes
Yeah.
around women and women coming up. I can tell you in the beginning when people would ask me, can you coach me and mentor me? One, I was like, oh, what am I possibly gonna coach you or tell you? So that was a Njabulo thing, and maybe about my confidence or feeling I had something to share. But someone else could have been like, oh, she doesn't want to coach me. Okay, because she thinks she's special. So I don't actually think it's true. Personally, it has not been my experience. I'm in an exco with like 61 or 62% females. So 5 women, which is very special. I don't get that sense. I think for me, everyone is credible. They're a boss in their own right. They do what they need to do. I think it's really largely a stereotype, and I think we should have that generosity both ways to say, let me engage and get to know the people or the women who I'd like to support me. There is a loneliness about being the only one. I've been in excos where I was the only female or the only black person, the youngest person, and there's nothing cute or special about being the first, the only, the different one. I just think sometimes it puts you in the space of I need to graft and show my worth, or I need to, and that's what people are busy with. They're not trying to be special or different. That's my sense, anyway, about
Interesting,
it. Yeah.
interesting. Mvuyi?
No, I mean, I totally agree. I think that I find it interesting that we never ask this question to men.
Yeah.
And I've experienced so much tension in boardrooms where you see two men, but nobody will ever call up. There's not even a label around that.
Yeah.
So that in itself is quite irritating,
Yeah.
in my view.
Yeah.
However, there are organizations where these things are well orchestrated, right? Let's be honest about that. There are organizations that encourage a certain culture of high dominance, high ego strength, very competitive, and you start to see women behaving like men. I've seen that before,
Yeah.
right?
No, that's true.
Especially to your point when there's a few of you, right? And there's no one who can tap you on the shoulder to say, hey,
Yeah.
can you stop?
Yeah.
Like, honestly, there's no need, you
Yes.
know?
And to win, you need to play according to the rules of
To
the
win,
game.
you need to
And
play
if it means you
according to
must
these
fight,
rules, right?
Be aggressive.
And then
Yeah.
the system creates this monster woman, you know, who thinks is above everyone else. So I have seen that. What I don't like is the labeling. So when it comes to these things and imposter syndrome, these labels are only for women.
Yeah.
And there's no definition or description for men. And that irks me. But I do recognize that there are cases where it happens. It's so beautiful when you work with women who are mature, who know their value and their worth. And actually, the mission is bigger than the individual achievement.
Yeah.
And that's when it comes together. And that's the women I value. And I've met so many of them throughout my career, Menzi. And there's more of them now than the other way. Perhaps when we started on this journey, you would have that, right? But
No,
it's
no,
definitely
true.
changed,
No,
changing
super.
or changed. Yeah.
Super, super. I was about to ask the next question about, few women in the boardroom, obviously, and, the perception, if you look down, probably the women that are aspiring to actually move up the ladder, I think they're probably thinking, how do we get there too, right?
Yeah.
And, the question that comes to mind is this deliberate? Because I hear all the fights that you have to go through, and I think they're having to prove your value, and at the same time, you have to forge these cliques in this boardroom. I mean, how does this thing work in the boardroom environment? And, without you having to feel like you need to outshine everyone, but really being genuine to yourself and who you are.
I go first?
I think the first time I was with women, there were 3 of us in the boardroom, and there was immediately this unwritten rule that we never call ourselves up in front of everybody. If there's an issue, we take it offline. And the coaching relationship developed from there to a point where there was so much psychological safety that if there was a business review and one of us has messed up, because it does happen at times that you forgot something, quite an important message that you've been rehearsing the whole week, suddenly it's gone on the day of the review, right? And that we could have those moments outside to say, let's do a debrief. What worked really well? Where could you have done better? It's understood that it's done with positive intent. It's understood that it's done to help you, not to break you, right? And so there are ways to set up those things, Menzi. And also there are ways to call out behavior. You can say to someone, "Hey, sister, please, can we go for coffee, man? This is not my vibe.
Yeah.
It's not my thing. Can we?" So the problem is retaliation. That's when it goes wrong. When you feel like, okay, I'm going to show you who I am, and that's when it doesn't work. But I think when you've been around a bit and you've reached a certain level of maturity, you just kind of know that that's not the way to go.
Yeah, I definitely think maturity is a factor. I also think some of it is genuinely just human dynamics.
Yeah.
So it's not a gender thing. I think
Yeah.
we know a lot of men who are emotional, immature, and all the labels that I put. Yes. And again, it's stereotypes that those labels are stuck on women, right?
Yeah.
And I just want to talk about emotions quickly. I always say there's nothing wrong with emotions in and of themselves. Normally talking to women, because women always bring up the emotions conversation, which applies to men too, is emotions it's a signal. It's telling you something. Things that's making you excited. It's the things that you're passionate about. Things that you're irritated about. Whatever. But it's what you do with those emotions that really matters. So that's just 2 seconds on emotions. But coming back to this women and bringing each other down, I just genuinely think it's a human thing.
Yeah.
It's a maturity issue. And the same principles around just respecting each other, having offline conversations, and just also when you say, what happens in boardrooms, I always say when people say, I'm not political, especially women say, my work will speak for itself. I said, no, actually, half of your job is to speak for your work, and it's not necessarily speaking, but how do you package and quantify the value that you bring, the contribution that you bring. And honestly, half of your job, the more senior you get, is about that. So when you have to then position things, that's where politics come in. And it's not always maybe in the most negative sense of politics. It's just generally about people have only so much attention span. There's competing priorities. And how do we show value for whatever it is that you're driving, what you're trying to get across? And in that is where the human dynamics come out, right? Because then some people are more aggressive about it, some people are loud about it, some are quiet, some are still hoping their work is talking and speaking for itself. And in all of that, that's where some of these, I say, the human dynamics come up. But it's definitely, I don't think, a gender issue as such. Yeah.
Super. Thank you very much. I think in just closing the coaching aspect of the conversation, right? I think one might be wondering, how do I become a coach as well, right? What capability do I require to actually build up onto, helping others? Because we've spoken about, I think, when we initiated the conversation about doing it unconsciously and how disruptive it can be as well, but at the same time, how aiding it can be. How do we make it more deliberate, but at the same time, empower others to actually become coaches? We're talking about females here, or women, yeah?
Yeah. I think it's firstly as a person, everybody, we've all heard, the leader without a title, everybody's a leader. I think also everybody has something to offer and actually has the potential to be a coach. So the first one is to actually believe that you have something to offer. And I've personally had to go through that journey where, again, it was not so much the resistance to coaching people. It was just genuinely like, what am I going to say? But once you engage, you do have wisdom, you do have experience, you have knowledge, things that you can share. So I think it's believing in what you are able to offer and then creating the room. I think that's one. Of course, there's levels to coaching where it can get much more professional, technical. There's tools, there's ways that you can guide people in terms of self-reflection and how to discover themselves. Because I think you made a very valid point about, for me, it's not about telling people what to do. It's about the self-discovery, the person who's being coached, the person who's being mentored, and there has to be room for that. But if you can be a sounding board, if you can be a mirror for a person, I really think everybody should feel that they have something that they can contribute.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think listening is important, right? You're right. Anybody can be a good. My mom can be a good coach, right? She doesn't need to do qualifications to do that. But it depends where you want to take it. When you want to do deep and meaningful work with people, that truly unlocks their potential. So I think there's no harm in investing in some kind of qualification if that's the space you want to play in.
Absolutely.
The International Coaching Federation is an amazing way, and it's got amazing tools and many different institutions that are linked to that. And they offer different methodologies around coaching. It's really where the space you want to play in. If your space is motivation and, helping people become bigger than what they think they are, there are different levers that you can pull. There's so much out there, Menzi.
Yeah. And there's so many different types of coaching,
Yeah.
I mean, one of my passion points at the moment is just the transition coaching to the point that you made about at every level. And I just think so many people miss the growth spurts as you move across levels, and that transition coaching as just one aspect can be game changing,
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's narrative coaching where you're just focused on storytelling.
Yeah.
Very powerful
You can
stuff,
sit and talk about your story, and the coach then try and piece together. The one that I love is around body language. I think it's Gestalt, where I can actually say, "Oh, Mainzi, you were looking that window. That's interesting. What was on your mind when you were doing that?"
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So there's so many of these things that enhances your natural ability, but the starting point is not qualifications, I would say.
Super. You've heard it, guys. You're ready, right? Now I want to move into the second aspect of this conversation, which is employability, which is pretty much maybe the bigger challenge that I think from an economy point of view we're still trying to solve for. We see our unemployment rates spiral to close to about 40%. But bring it closer to this specific conversation, right? Would you say, maybe let's start with you, Mvuyi. Would you say ethnicity, culture, gender, or socio-economical background contribute or could impact employability? I think I know the answer, but I want to hear your opinion.
Absolutely.
Guys,
It
yeah?
absolutely does. I mean, we know our history. We talk about it all the time in Unilever. I think ethnicity and gender, historically, we know where we come from in this country. The laws have gone a long way to try and help organizations with that. But there's serious commitment from corporates to kind of make this work. And I think every organization is on a journey on that. The socioeconomic is interesting, like things like language and culture and communication style, and how that can be a barrier to entry in a corporate level. Doesn't matter how smart you are and whether you had good grades in matric. If you can't articulate yourself really well, it can become a challenge, right? Because there's a certain profile. I find it fascinating that we've advanced employment equity, but in that, different organizations have built this profile of what good looks like. Yeah, you gotta talk in a certain way, you gotta do things in a certain way, and those are things that you and I, as HR practitioners, have to keep a close watch on, right? Because we're still not being inclusive, right, to everyone if we attach. So language and communication, of course, education, poverty, access to resources. I was listening in the radio the other day. So a lot of the schools in the rural areas are shutting down now because of the quality of education. People are moving a lot more to the cities to access that. And so those are kind of the big hurdles, along with unemployment and everything else that we're facing in this country. So the short answer is yes, and we have a big job to do beyond equity and race. We have a big job as black people sitting in this room in driving inclusivity, because what I find, once we're in, we're in. And we're in for ourselves, and we don't always think about what we're leaving behind, right? And we start to perpetuate some of these behaviors as well. And so in unlocking barriers, for me, is not a one person's job. It requires all of us to just be mindful about that. And the one I feel strongly about is language and communication, because we have so many biases on this.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Njabulo, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I think, well, I feel like Mvuyi said it all.
Okay, super.
But I mean, I concur. I think on the inclusion piece, I think especially in a racially charged, because South Africa is very racially charged, and if you out of South Africa, you come back, it's so pronounced, you know, that's almost the only understanding that people have of diversity and inclusion. But the inclusion piece is so important, I think, in the broad definition. And also, how do we create spaces where everybody can belong and everybody can feel like I can, show up as my best self. Yeah.
Oh, super, super. I love the belonging part of it. So let's look at it now from a cultural influence point of view and the environment in which, we find ourselves in, either from a family expectation, cultural settings, family role models. They can be good and bad, ethnicity barriers.
Yeah.
Careers that are sometimes chosen for us because we knew nothing better but what we knew at that time, right? How does that impact one's self-efficacy outcomes and expectations,
Yeah.
and the
Valid question.
employability efforts. And also, I think the most important thing is, people really loving what they do more than just doing it because they're supposed to do it, right?
Yeah.
And
Sure.
that's
And
directed to you, Njabulo.
What a question.
well, I was about to jump on it, so thank you. I'm glad it was directed to me. So I feel very strongly about self-efficacy because, and that's why even just in the coaching journey, before you seek a coach, before anything, you really, really, really have to understand yourself. You need to spend time with self. And self is made up definitely at the roots. There's a bit of a sound. Can I carry on?
I'm sure you can. Let's carry on.
It's okay? Okay. So in terms of self, certainly, I think one, we all grow up within a community or a society, and I mean, we've spoken about patriarchal elements, where you come from, the perceptions around what is possible for women in particular. That matters a lot, and that's how we show up to the world. Sometimes we already show up with limited beliefs because of what we've been told, how we grew up, the role modeling. We've seen our parents maybe play a particular role, our extended family, but not having other perspectives in terms of what is possible. So that's why it's quite important to have that external orientation to kind of burst your own bubble in terms of what is possible. And I think from a self-efficacy point of view, to have your own growth story, So what is my self-image? How do I value myself, the role that I see myself playing in the world? And that's where coaches, psychologists, wellness, all of that comes into place because it's so important. The one person that you spend the most time with is yourself. And so to befriend yourself, to like the things you don't like about yourself, but understand them and appreciate them, that's also part of what actually helps you to build a strong career because you know how to compensate for your gaps, how to build a network around you, which helps you to be able to show up as your best self. And I think we completely underestimate that. And I think also the limitations, as I've said, if we still are in a patriarchal society, even though there's been much more consciousness in terms of, women coming to the top, but how do I then look at myself every day, showing up in that world? Does it limit me in any way? And how can I overcome some of the barriers which maybe I'm imposing on myself? Because you need to own your growth story, your journey, your career. Even when people tell you you're not great, you have to be able to balance that against what do I think about this? And because there's also so many people who are waiting for somebody to tell them, you're great, you're amazing, you're actually terrible, your life is not going anywhere, and they believe everything that's being said to them. They have nothing to compare it to really have a sense check with themselves in terms of what do I think about what I'm being told and what am I going to do about it. And that's very important. Yeah.
And Mvuyi, moving from class to class, trying to figure out how to navigate and which career path to choose to end up where you are today. Do you mind maybe responding to this question as well?
Yeah, so I think how the journey starts is important, right? And if the story around your upbringing is not a good one, it's going to catch up with you later on. I'm a proud Generation X. I'm a product of the silent generation who were very big on traditional values. They were big on work ethic. They were big on spending money wisely, whether rich or poor. I didn't grow up in a rich family, but I felt very rich because I had this wisdom and knowledge, which set a good foundation for me growing up. And that's linked to self-efficacy because when you get to those moments where self-belief is low and you don't have that grounding, you don't have good role models, you don't have people when you close your eyes and it's tough that you can see who have made it, it becomes even more of a bigger problem. And so how you tell your story about where you come from, your upbringing is as important as how kind of you get there and actually can help open and unlock doors, right, in terms of employability. So to Njabulo's point, if all you've heard is, oh, look at this one next door, they're better than you, look at this, and you carry that bag with you wherever you go, it does become a problem later on. The other thing is locus of control that I've found. I find people who with an internal locus of control overcome adversity better,
Absolutely.
right? Because you control your own destiny. You are on the driving seat. You never blame the outside world. Whereas those who are externally driven, everything is shaped around what's happening around them, right? And so, in that spirit of getting to know yourself that you were talking to, just understanding where you are, where's your default during hard times, especially for young people right now. You know, you said, well, now you're here. I got here because I pushed through, not because of anything else, right? Every challenge is an opportunity. And I find with young people today, there's a lot of giving up too quickly. There's a lot of, oh, well, you know, being overwhelmed. And if we could just change that mindset around self-belief, I think it can unlock a lot of things.
Self-reflection, knowing self, right? Very important. I would like now to maybe go and take some few questions, if we may. Maybe let's start with one on the floor, if you don't mind, ladies.
Yep.
And then we will also look at the questions that are probably online as well. Do we have a question on the floor? If you don't mind just standing, maybe saying who you are and asking the question, sir?
Sorry, can you hear me? I don't.
No, we
We
do.
do.
There are people on the line, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
break
Yeah,
it.
all right, mic check 1 2 1 2. First and foremost, ladies, thank you so much for today. It's been really a learning experience, and thank you for the vulnerability that you've also shown in terms of just your own life paths and what you've gone through. I just had a question, something that you mentioned earlier that stood out to me, which is you can work hard, you can try to speak for your work, but you always need, at some point, a sponsor, right? And there's very few people that I've met that reach the highest levels without sponsors on the way. My question to you is there a way, or is it too idealistic, but is there a way of making that process more equitable? Because some people's names will never be said, no matter how hard they try. And that's just a fact. And other people's names will be said multiple times. And like you said, it's not necessarily because you're the best. It's just because that sponsor has that ability in rooms in where you have no access to vouch for you. And so when I look at that, I ask, is there a more equitable way of doing that? Is it something that we can teach the young people to, I don't know, advertise themselves better? Because we also know we have a bias towards extroversion sometimes. People that are extroverted get further ahead and probably get the chance of being sponsored because they talk more and they're doing exactly what I'm doing now, right? So I just wanted to know if there's a more equitable way of doing that for the person that knows that actually that job should have been mine, but I just didn't have a sponsor.
Yeah.
You know?
Thank you. That's a very good question, sir. Yeah.
Yeah. I do think it's a very good question, an important question. I think it's multi-pronged. So I think for someone to vouch for you, for someone to be your sponsor, you have to also be worthy of sponsorship. Yes, we know life is unfair, is everyone worthy, but certainly for someone to put themselves on the line behind a closed door to be able to talk about you and to speak up for you, there has to be something to talk about. And I think why I start with that, again, the self part, and for me it's kind of identify people who you believe can be your sponsors. I always say you should try to actually have more than one person who can vouch for you. The logical person is your line manager, your boss, but you always want to have somebody outside of your immediate manager who can be able to talk about you, whether it's your boss's boss or someone else in another function, a client that you're supporting. And there you do need to be deliberate. And this is the part about the work doesn't speak for itself. You need to position your work. And to the point about introverts and extroverts, definitely, I think if you profile the average big organization, it's an extrovert, if the organization was personified. And so introverts tend to have difficulty. My advice is always find ways to show up that feel natural to you. So if you are an introvert, write an email after a meeting, to say, Mr. Mangmang or Mrs. Hopefully, the women empowerment, okay, it will be a woman. And you're saying, ma'am, no, but if you're saying, Mvuyi, that was an amazing meeting, I really would like to understand a bit more about what you actually meant about self-efficacy. One, you're top of mind, you're showing curiosity.
Yeah.
About the topic, and she's gonna also be like, oh, okay, so somebody was listening. And that's an email. You meet her in the passageway, you have a coffee session. You do need to push yourself a bit outside of your boundary, but it doesn't mean moving from one characteristic to be something that you're not. But find ways that are natural to you, but you have to be the one who drives the visibility, who drives the consciousness. And then I think in every organization, we all know very quickly, that's why they say there's the official culture and there's the real culture, what drives this organization. And once you have an understanding, how does my contribution align to what's important in this organization? And people sometimes don't do that work to be able to be worthy of sponsorship. And then I think on the system part, one of the big conversations we're having in my organization is around an integrated approach to talent management. So ideally, people who come up as top talents or whatever they called at Unilever, those are the people who ought to be sponsored, right? And I know it doesn't always work in that logical way, but how do you drive it with the leaders and the people who are the drivers of talent in the organization to be able to say, beyond having it on a piece of paper following performance reviews, what are you actually doing to help this person to get to the next level? And I think have that conversation beyond mentoring. There's the sponsorship. Would you actually put this person in that destination role? And if there is no destination role, why did you say they were a talent? So we need to also, through our work, force that interaction between the future and the present. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm an introvert, and it can be challenging. It's even worse when you're an introvert. By introversion, I mean in the sense you draw energy from within rather than from others. But you're also quiet, right, and reserved. Yeah. So now there are multiple layers. So I think what has helped me is mismatching, actually, and finding people who are different from me and can stretch me in a very different way and get me to get a different perspective of how organizations work and how this thing works, number one. Secondly, sponsorship, it has to be someone who's in a position of influence, right? They gotta have an equal seat in the boardroom. They gotta have a strong voice, otherwise it's a complete waste of time, right? And so I think taking the time to mapping out who those people are and then being intentional around showing up in moments that matter, to build a relationship with them, to make sure that they know your worth, they know your value, and know what they do. That is the heavy lift, especially when they are not within your space, within your function. But here's the thing that I resisted is the listening part, because often these people are around, right, and they're telling you all the time what you need to do. But you're either rejecting the feedback or you're not paying attention to it, right? And it's happened a lot to me when I started in my mid-career, this introversion thing, being forced into, when you come into social settings, you gotta kind of be everywhere, right? That's a stretch for an introvert. And when I received that feedback the first time, I really resisted it. I was like, this is not me. If the organization wants to change me, then we need to have another conversation, right? But I wasn't actually paying attention to what this person was saying, to say, for you to succeed and to accelerate your leadership and to have impact, this is one area on your journey that you gotta focus on. And that person who gave me that feedback in the bar at work, we had a bar at work, on a Friday afternoon, ended up becoming my sponsor, right? I always wonder if I had just stayed in the rejection mode, where that would have ended. So there's a bit of work that we have to do in the signals, the things that people tell us, absorbing them, going, but what did you mean when you said I was this in this meeting? And not get defensive all the time, and that helps to build that chemistry even further. I hope that's helpful.
Super. I don't know if I should take one question online, then come back to the room as well. So there's a question around creating capacity for leaders to be able to avail themselves to actually do the work. And I think most people are finding that to be challenging, right? I mean, what's your perception around that? And how do we create this capacity to enable the coaching? Because we're always saying we're busy. Our calendars are always, fully capacitated, and we never really free up time to actually make this more deliberate. What's your perception, Njabulo, on this? And how do you deal with it?
Sure. Especially it's a very real issue, the capacity issue. I think for me, it's about always conscientizing the leaders that coaching and leading people is your job, because we sometimes treat it as the side thing, which is why we don't actually make the time for it. But if we integrate it more into the understanding that actually when you are in a leadership role and you are accountable to deliver through others, part of your job is actually to be able to show up in the leadership space for those people. I think it's an issue across many organizations, and sometimes, a lot of the times, in fact, people still get promoted because of their technical ability and not because they're the most well-rounded people leaders. But we have to make it a core competency and a core part of having to be in a leadership role, is that you actually have to lead and coach, and then build it into your life cycle in terms of how you manage. Yeah.
Yeah, super.
I don't know the answer. So if there's someone with a brilliant idea, please come and coach me on this, because I think that is my biggest challenge at the moment. So I've tried on a Friday just with my direct reports. That's my moment where I'm kind of connecting with them. But what happens is everybody comes with their list, right? Need a decision on this, and so we're not getting to the coaching moment, because that one meeting is so important to get through stuff. So but outside of my direct reports, if people are really serious about this stuff, I'm always willing to extend my time if people can do a Saturday morning breakfast. Not my team, right? Because I don't want to encourage that as a culture. But I've done it before in my younger days. Operators who wanted to advance their careers, we used to meet on a Friday evening after work or Saturday morning, and we had these career workshops, and people were willing to invest their time because they recognized it couldn't be done in the week. So outside my team, I'm open to that, but work-wise, I'm still learning.
Super. Thank you. Let me take one more question on the floor, right? And then I'll end up with one last question, and then we'll probably close. Yeah?
I think there's two questions.
There's two questions. Let's make them snappy.
I'll be quick. I don't even know how to ask my question, but thank you very much. I've heard the power of coaching, mentorship, sponsorship. Personal branding is always a difficult one, because you never know the fine line of how do I show what I'm doing and I think it's amazing, and how do I put it out there without seeming like you being egotistical or all of those other things. So there's a fine balance, but I understand the power of that. My last one that I kept on thinking about is the power of networks, and how do you build your networks, and what do you think is the value of that in order for you to advance your career?
I think, professional networks are important, Namhla, because they help broaden your perspective, best practice. You were talking about talent management. Now you got me curious. And so that's important. I actually think it's easier these days with social media to build that. And people are very open, actually, to collaborate, because what I find, particularly in the HR profession, we all have the same challenges, right? So there's power actually in us coming together than us trying to fight these battles on our own. I hear you on the branding piece. That's not something I've really mastered really well myself in terms of showing your work. I guess it comes from intention. I learned something in this early program we're doing, which is about servant leadership. If your intentions are good, right, and it's not about showcasing or shining or being, you know, then there's a way you can make it work. And so I think just searching yourself first and then aligning it to who you are at the core and doing it that way tends to land better than when you're faking it, right? So, I mean, that's what I can offer.
Yeah, and I would say also, so I think my mic moved. I think link it to the business challenges. That always helps. And I think it will relieve that sense or that burden that oh, I'm just showing off. Because I don't even think that's what people are trying to do. But this is how my work, my contribution could aid this thing that we're trying to solve for. I think that's always a good starting point. And I just think on the networks, it's build it slowly but intentionally. It's really, there's no rush.
My other point is when you work for global multinationals like us, right? Global networks do matter. You cannot be on a global call for 90 minutes and not have an opinion on the topic that's being presented. Otherwise, why are you even invited there? Right? You shouldn't be on that call. If you've got no opinion, you don't agree or disagree, you're just there. Right? And so I've learned to be intentional about those things, right? If the topic is boring, you know, I'll say, well, Africa's all in, thank you very much, or something, right? If I have a provocative question, I will spend time framing it right, and at the right moment, I'm going to ask it. But to stay silent all the time, you're not going to build networks that way. Okay.
Thank you very much. Do you still have a
Cool.
pressing
Yes,
question?
I do.
Okay.
I'll make it snappy. Njabulo, I'm so tempted to ask you why the Vodacom network was teka-teki last week. But I will spare you that one. Ladies, thank you so much. We spoke about, you know, the challenges that women face, which actually the stereotyping is part of that as well. But I think maybe we can shift a bit to the positive side of what is so stunning and fantastic about being a black female leader. What is so great? Okay, just for the positive vibes. Thank you.
Love that. Thank you.
Everything.
Yeah.
But you go for it.
No, I just feel like the journey is so different. Yeah. The story is amazing. We were on a global forum the other day. They were talking about careers, and this lady from Germany, CHRO, came to me and said, "Why didn't they have you on stage? Like, we're listening to all these people from Europe who all have similar experiences." So I think there's something unique about being South African, being a black female South African leader. So I would encourage all of you to share your stories because they will inspire others. Not to mention we're beautiful and we age well. And yeah, we come from a legacy and journey of amazing women. For me, I'm just proud to have that.
Me too. I love everything about being black. I love everything about being female. I think there's never been a better time to be black and female. And I think so many people underestimate what they bring to every conversation, to every job that you do, and you just need to lean into that. And I do want to just say Vodacom is the best network. It's the load shedding that affects the network. Literally, the network runs on electricity. And yeah, I just wanted to add that. So, yeah.
Thank you very much, guys. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you to everyone that is sitting here. You've taken away an hour to actually build additional capability that you probably would need somewhere down the line. And I do apologize for the questions that we could not cover. Probably, I think, series 4, maybe 5, 6, 7, I don't know where we're going to end. We'll probably cater for those questions, and we'll definitely make sure we respond to them. Thank you very much, Mvuyi. Thank you very much, Njabulo, for taking off your time to actually be with us this morning. Really appreciate that. Salute.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It was
Thank
awesome.
you. That's awesome.